welcome to Dalefoot Pig Row, and today we're in the greenhouse because it's absolutely rotten out there. It's rained for the last week and the winds have got really high for us and for many of you. And what we're here today to do is to look at the tomatoes in our greenhouse. We had a trial this year. We were growing it in Dalefoot tomato compost, in nothing other than what's in our border, and we were growing it in the double strength Dalefoot compost so we could compare and contrast yields. Let's have a look at them. So the greatest criticism we hear about growing tomatoes is that I don't have the time, I've got a full-time job, they're really faffy, I've got to take up the side shoots. So with that in mind, this year we've actually left our tomatoes alone. And it has been a bad year for tomatoes because the weather has gone backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards between heat and cold, and tomatoes don't like that. And when tomatoes are under stress, they start to show signs and sometimes they get blight. So we're going to look at what happened to our tomatoes in the greenhouse growing these 3 different mediums. So first out of the gate, it's a Dalefoot double strength compost. And just to show you, we've got a bramble in the middle that's absolutely loving the double compost. But let's have a look at the plant for health. So we'll start from the top and we'll work our way down. And sure enough, we've got signs of stress from the cold going backwards and forwards. But the plant's fighting it off. There's fruit coming. There you are, lovely and green. As we go down, you'll start to see it gets redder and redder. So we're getting a really good crop off these tomatoes, and these are our gardener's delight. If we go to the back here again, we've got stress because it's next to the glass, but we have tomatoes forming. I don't know if you can see down there in our beefsteak tomatoes, and we're going to sort these out later on, show you what can be done in another video to tidy up your tomatoes. This is our control. In the middle of the greenhouse, no compost has been added. Again, we've got vigorous growth, but you'll notice straight away, unlike the double strength compost, this has been dropping tomatoes. It does that when it's stressed. And also we've got signs of rot. Now this may be because of watering, or more than likely because we water twice a week. It's more than likely it's because of the weather. But going down the plant again, signs of nutrient deficiencies. We come down here, but we've got tomatoes forming. Again, gardener's delight. Now let's look at the beefsteak. It's the beefsteak that shows the difference between the double strand from Dalefoot and between the control. Again, a bramble. You can see as we go here, we've got problems with blossom end rot, and it's gone right through the plant. The plant hasn't formed fruit. It has on the one next door. You can see through there. We've got fruit forming there. So finally, we have Dalefoot's tomato compost. And though the plants are really vigorous and forming fruits, they have unfortunately succumbed to the fluctuations in temperature. Because they're down the far end of the greenhouse, it has nothing to do with the growing medium, nothing to do with Dalefoot compost, everything to do with temperature. So if you see here by the greenhouse window, you can see how the leaves have curled, and this is largely down to hot days and cold nights, and it doesn't matter if you put up any shading, this will happen anyway. So finally, what do we think? Do we go ahead using peat-free compost? Do we go ahead using our own compost, which was in the border? That was our control, had been there for years. Or do we go for a different peat-free compost, or do we go back to peat? Well, no, we do not go back to peat. Any gardener out there who's using peat, come on. It's the 21st century, folks. We know what peat does. We know what it does to habitat. You know, you're destroying acre after acre of habitat. And if you're moaning there's no birds and there's no butterflies and there's no bees and you're using peat, you're the problem. Right, let's backtrack to what we're talking about, which is the tomatoes. It's been a difficult year. like I said, fluctuations in temperature. I am actually getting the same crop off all three. The only one that's suffering the most is the tomato-based compost, which is down this end of the greenhouse and probably gets less of the light as the sun passes over. So if we look at weights, well, so far I've had about £4 of tomatoes off the double strength. I've had 4.5 off my own compost and barely 1 on the tomato-based compost. That's gardening for you. But have my plants grown better? Yes, they have grown better this year. Really good growth on all of the plants, bar ones that have succumbed to fluctuations in temperature. So what would I do next year? Well, for starters, let's look at tomato growing in a different way. Next year, I won't plant them like this. It won't be a monoculture. I will plant a tomato, plant another plant, plant another plant. So what will happen? I'll have a tomato, courgette, salad. Tomato, courgette, salad. And that helps with the air in the greenhouse to move around. But also, it means if my tomato gets a disease, it can't readily pass it on to the next tomato along. And we need to start looking at these different ways of growing. Monocultures are not found in nature unless it's a weed, okay? And we should not replicate it in growing our food. But we do that in greenhouses, so stay tuned. Next year, I can't believe I'm talking about that already, but next year, we'll look at how we can grow our tomatoes differently and whether we get bigger yields because of that. Okay, so until next time, thank you for tuning in to Life on Pig Row and listening to me rambling. Like and subscribe. Click the little bell so you get notifications, and it's good to talk to you, and we'll all talk again soon. Bye bye.